kind of the classic story of sleep paralysis to an out-of-body experience, but it built and built and built and built. All the sensations got really intense to where I thought like, okay, I guess I'm going to die. Like, this is bad. But then it all just went away and it was peaceful. And I literally, felt myself lift up out of my body. It was nice and quiet. All the fear was instantly gone. Floated up through the bunks and through the pipes, and then was shooting through a tunnel of like this wispy white light. But in the background of my mind, I had this memory of like, oh yeah, I remember this. I'm not scared at all, and I should be terrified. Like, this is like a death experience, but it's great. I love this. And eventually ended up in this vast three-dimensional void of nothingness. My first thought was, well, here I am, like, I want to see God. But as soon as I had that thought, I was like shot back to my body instantly and woke up and was just like, what the hell was that? I'd asked a pretty straightforward question, like, I want to see God. And the answer was, get out of here.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Consciousness Hub podcast. My name's Michelle, and my guest today is Justin Snodgrass. He is an artist and an author, and his work has been inspired over the years by his explorations of consciousness and by paranormal experiences that he has had. Starting, I think you said you were about 18, Justin. Is that right?
Yes.
Well, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. And please tell us how you got started. Tell us, where you came from and what you were doing and who you were before the experience. And then how did the experience change you and what path did it set you down on?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for having me. Yeah. The, the experience when I was 18 was a UFO encounter. And, as a teenager growing up, I wasn't the greatest kid on the planet. I, struggled in high school, not because I was not smart enough, but just because I didn't care. There was a lot of divorces and step siblings and that kind of chaos. And I kind of just turned to my friends and, I cared about girls, cars, and when the next party was going to be and that kind of stuff. So spirituality wasn't at all in my awareness at all. But there was a particular summer after I graduated, my friend and I, well, in fact, we had stole some beer from a bowling alley storage room and, snuck in, grabbed it and snuck off and went to the local baseball fields to drink the beer. And so we were sitting in this parking lot of the baseball fields and it was empty. No one was around and we had the windows down and it was a nice, summer's evening. And as we started drinking the first beer, I kept seeing kind of a red hue inside the truck. And then it would fade. So I would think, oh, it's just my eyes. And then pretty soon it would be this kind of blue hue inside the truck and it would fade. But pretty soon it kept getting a little brighter and a little more frequent until finally I turned to my friend and I was like, what is that? And he didn't have any idea either, but he noticed as well. And of course, my first thought was that there was a police car or something coming. So, we looked around, kind of panicked, but there was nobody around. It was nice and quiet. And it happened a little bit longer. And finally I looked up through the windshield and it was completely shocked by what I saw. It was this massive row of lights in the sky. I couldn't see any structure, but it was just a massive row of about 12 lights. And it was, directly overhead. And the lights just kind of flashed across the row, boom, 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 boom. And then it stopped. And then it would be way over in a completely different area of the sky. And it would repeat the same kind of random flashing. It would do that there for a while. And then all of a sudden it was way back over here, kind of above us, and it would repeat the same thing. And then it was over there and then over here. And it did this for like 3 minutes. And both of us just kind of sat there, completely stunned, like, what the hell is happening? And eventually it got closer to the horizon and vanished. And, we were both like, what was that? Like that wasn't even something that was possible to happen. I didn't really think about UFOs or that kind of thing. And what's interesting is a few minutes after it vanished, we were sitting there kind of processing it. And a little single engine plane, went across the sky and it put it into perspective. I was like, wow, first of all, it's really small. you can make out what it is, you can hear it, and it's slow in relation to what just happened. So it really put into perspective how big the lights were, how silent they were, and how much sky they transversed instantaneously. So I knew enough about, physics to know that that's not possible, not in the physical reality. So I didn't really know what to do with that, but it was exciting. And so I just kind of put it in my pocket and went on about my business. And, it's funny, my friend, who I didn't expect to tell everyone at school, did. And so when I showed up for school, I think it was like the last week of school, everyone was coming up to me and, saying, "Oh, we heard you saw a UFO. Like, did the aliens abduct you?" And, that kind of stuff. And I was like, "Oh, I don't know." But so it had a pretty big impact on me. And then I enlisted in the Navy. And like I said, I wasn't the best student, but once I got into the Navy and had a lot of free time on the ship at sea, I started to read a lot. And I think I maybe finished Huckleberry Finn in high school, and that was the only book that I'd ever read. But in the Navy, I started devouring books and realized like what I had been missing out on. I think the first one I read was a book about Jim Morrison and the Doors. And somewhere in that book, it talked about, I think it was that book, it talked about this idea of holding your arm up in the air, your forearm up in the air as you fall asleep. And as you're falling asleep, your forearm will fall and you'll wake up and you'll realize the hypnagogic imagery that you're experiencing that you normally just, you don't notice at all because you fall asleep. So I was doing that and I was really shocked by, how much is going on behind the scenes that I'm not even aware of. So it made me kind of wonder, well, surely my dreams are, pretty interesting if I was to really like record all of them and write all of them down. And I got really interested in the hypnagogia as I fell asleep and then also keeping a dream journal. And now at this time, I had never heard of lucid dreaming because, like I said, I wasn't interested in spirituality or anything. I just thought it would be fun to do. So I started logging my dreams and continued to read about spirituality. And it kind of progressed from the Jim Morrison book, all the way down the line to the Bible that I read cover to cover. And I was just kind of like trying to figure it out. And somewhere in there, I started having sleep paralysis, which I think is kind of a natural side effect of keeping a dream journal. You wake up at night and you log your dreams. Eventually, you wake up to sleep paralysis on accident. And that was absolutely terrifying because I didn't even know that that was a thing either. So, you wake up paralyzed. And for me, sleep paralysis, it still is when I have it. It's extremely intense. And I've got theories about why, but it's always been intense, but particularly back then because I had no idea what was happening. There was always a loud noise. Like I remember hearing William Buhlman not too long ago say something about it. It's like being inside of a jet engine sometimes, and that's a pretty good explanation of what it feels like. Mm-hmm. And to me, it also feels like I'm being electrocuted, and pulled apart, kind of like all of my molecules are being ripped apart. And there's always voices and an imposing figure, which is pretty common. So I was having that go on at the same time, and because of all the books I was reading, I kind of cornered myself into a existential crisis where I had taken in too much information. There was these weird nighttime things that were happening, and I was like, it was too much uncertainty and a lot of fear. So I started having panic attacks during the day. And so, now I was thinking like something's really wrong with me. Like I'm having this weird thing at night. I'm having these panic attacks. Like my brain's broken. And so I was trying to navigate all that as best as I could. But then one night I had a dream where I was climbing into a tree with this beautiful woman. And all of a sudden it hit me. It's like, what am I doing climbing into a tree with this lady? And then I thought, oh my God, I'm dreaming. Like, wait, this is a dream. And it was such a relief to have that realization just because it's so open and freeing. And I know that most people that, could look back on their first lucid dream and sort of recall that epiphany or just that eye-opening experience of like, oh, this is possible. Or at least it was for me because I had never heard of lucid dreaming until that happened. And so I woke up and wrote it down, and the next day was thinking about it. And I couldn't get over the fact that nobody's talking about this. Like, if this is really a thing, if this is possible, why isn't it big news? Why isn't everybody like literally talking about it all day long? Because it was so amazing. And so I didn't really know what to do with that, but I just kind of held on to it and continued trying to struggle through the panic attacks and all the uncertainty. And then at some point, when I was having sleep paralysis. Well, actually, let me back up a little bit. I was getting into my Jeep one day and I started it. And, back then it was FM and AM radio. There was, maybe cassettes, but I was listening to the radio or had the radio on. And I started to get that sense in my chest and my heart started pounding. I was like, oh no, this is that sense of impending doom. It was a panic attack starting, which I didn't have the words for it back then. I just knew this crazy thing was happening. And so as I'm sitting there experiencing this impending doom and this like crazy fear of death and this thing happening on the radio, there's literally an announcement that says, do you ever have an intense fear of death? Do you feel like a sense of impending doom? You may be a good candidate for our research into panic attacks at the University of whatever. And it was just this sudden relief that just, left me. The stress left me, and it was a sudden relief because I realized, oh, I'm just scared of dying. Like all of this existential thought and all this exploration of trying to figure out what's what just left me with this intense fear of the unknown and of dying. So it didn't make it go away necessarily, but I recognized like, oh, that's where this is coming from. So it was relieving. And then maybe a few nights later, I woke up to sleep paralysis again. And it was like, oh boy, here we go again. But I decided, you know what, I'm tired of this fear and being afraid. So I decided I'm just going to let it go and see what happens. I'm not going to try to pull myself out of it. And it's kind of the classic story of sleep paralysis to an out-of-body experience, but it built and built and built and built. All the sensations got really intense to where I thought like, okay, I guess I'm going to die. Like this is bad. But then it all just went away and it was peaceful. And I literally, felt myself lift up out of my body. It was nice and quiet. All the fear was instantly gone, floated up through the bunks and through the pipes, and then was shooting through a tunnel of like this wispy white light. And so I'm flying through this tunnel. And what struck me, I wasn't necessarily thinking about it up front, but in the background of my mind as this was happening, I had this memory of like, oh yeah, I remember this. And it was just this memory of that place, that state that was familiar. And I also in the background of my mind realized like, I'm not scared at all. And I should be terrified. Like this is like a death experience, but it's great. I love this. And so I went through the tunnels for a while and eventually ended up in this vast 3-dimensional void of nothingness, which, I came to learn later was common for me to go to that place, once an experience started. And I floated around there for a while. And, at the time I was reading the Bible and reading all sorts of spiritual books. So my first thought was, well, here I am. Like, I want to see God. That was my request. But as soon as I had that thought, I was like shot back to my body instantly and woke up and was just like, what the hell was that? Like, that was crazy. But I didn't really know what to do with it because, I'd asked a pretty straightforward question. Like, I want to see God. And the answer was, get out of here. So what do you do with that? I don't know. And I didn't really know what to do with it then. So those 4 years of my life were kind of like altogether this awakening experience to where I realized, okay, there's a lot more going on than I thought, and a lot more than I thought before the UFO experience, to be sure. But I knew there was a lot to explore. But I got out of the Navy and, went back to kind of normal life. I got busy with school, and then I got married. My wife and I adopted a medically fragile child. So I became a full-time stay-at-home dad, and that became my entire focus. And it wasn't until, I don't know, 2008, I think. So quite a few years later, I got out of the Navy in 96, I think. So this was whatever the math on that is, 8 years later, something like that. And I was working on my computer, and in the background on the TV, I heard somebody talking about Stephen LaBerge and lucid dreaming. And I remembered, oh yeah, lucid dreaming, like that must be what I was having back then. But I don't think I'd ever heard the term lucid dreaming until then. If I did, I didn't make the connection. So I got really excited because it kind of reinvigorated that desire to, seek and to figure things out. So I ordered his book and, dove right in and started using all of the different techniques, except for the one that utilizes sleep paralysis, because I still was not, a big enough fan and courageous enough to use that as a regular tool, even though it had led to some, out of body experience in the past. But I started doing all the, the other tricks. Like the reality testing and keeping a regular dream journal and all those sorts of things, and got to the point where I was having regular lucid dreams, 2 or 3 a week, let's say. And so that went on for quite a while. And then somewhere on the lucid dreaming forums, I came across somebody talking about Bob Monroe's book and this term out of body and then astral projection. And I started thinking like, well, I don't know what that is, but that sounds kind of like witchcraft or something, woo woo. I'm not interested in that so much. But the more I read, the more I started to realize like this is kind of sounding similar to what my lucid dream experiences are like, and the sleep paralysis and that thing that I had happen back in the Navy. So I ordered his book and read it and was kind of shocked and unsettled, because as I'm reading his experiences, I'm realizing like, wait a minute, am I having lucid dreams or am I having out of body experiences? Because the two overlapped too much for me to say that one was certainly one and one was certainly the other. And looking at Bob Monroe's experiences, I saw a lot of parallels. So it was kind of this uncertainty of, have I really just been playing in my subconscious with lucid dreaming, or am I like a child in a machine shop around all this dangerous equipment without any idea that, it's dangerous, in other realities with other entities and stuff. So that was a little unsettling. But I continued to explore with lucid dreaming and kept it in my mind, and then eventually came across Tom Campbell's book, My Big Toe.
Mhm.
And that's when I read that book, that's when everything sort of clicked together and helped me to form sort of a framework around the ideas that I had come to believe about reality, and the way that existence works, but also put a framework around the experiences I had had.
Mhm.
So I kind of joked in the years after that I read it that My Big Toe kind of ruined reading for me, because I love to read. I love to go find the next book. And it's like, well, what's the next book after that? Like that kind of resolved everything. So I use that as a guidepost, and that's when I really dove into out of body, because then I wasn't so scared of it anymore. I had this framework, like what I would have called God, Tom called the larger consciousness system, and the idea of fear tests, and the idea of courage being the only antidote to fear. And all these ideas really helped me decide like, okay, I'm going to figure out this out of body thing. And that's when I started ordering all of the typical books that everybody orders: William Buhlman, Robert Bruce, all the usuals, and started really reading about it and using all of the techniques and tricks to increase the probability of it happening at night. And then I spent about, probably, I would say it'd be the next 4 or 5 years, learning to explore the non-physical using those tricks. But I considered most of the techniques that I was using sneak up techniques, because it was always me just aligning everything so that it was more likely to happen spontaneously at night. And it worked for the most part, but it wasn't always consistent and it wasn't always guaranteed. And you might put in a week's worth of work, finally have an experience, and then get too excited, and then you're shot back to your body, and it's like, well, that was a lot of wasted work for nothing. But I
Mhm.
got to the point where I could do it pretty regularly, like 2 to 3 a week I could instigate. But it got to the point where I'd had enough experiences to say, okay, this is really interesting, and done a few, experiments. Like one set of experiments I did was to test the realness within the experience. And that was pretty eye opening. I would basically, got into a non-physical state in an immersive state. And I just decided, okay, to stop and test something. Like in one case, I bent down and touched this green shag carpet that was in the experience. And it was really surprisingly shocking how amazing that was, because it wasn't just the fact that I could like zoom into the carpet. It was just the fact that like I consciousness was in this other state, but doing this regular thing of investigation, where it started to feel real. And it was like, okay, this is real. Like
Mhm.
for whatever this is, it's real. And I did that over like the next two experiences, which luckily happened in that same week. And I did the same thing. In one case, there was a piece of plastic on the wall, and I was investigating it, and it was the same kind of shocking experience of like, oh my God, like this is real. Whatever real means, I don't know, but this is, as real as the reality that I'm in during my waking life. So I did a lot of those kind of experiments, but I wanted to be able to transition consciously, because it wasn't reliable enough to just try to hope that I could instigate it spontaneously with the sneak up techniques, like wake back to bed, you go to sleep with an intent, and then hopefully you wake up later in sleep paralysis, or doing reality checks all day and then hoping that you become lucid in a dream and then can go on to explore from there. So I wanted to learn more about the process of what's involved from shifting here to there. Like, what is it? What's the mechanism? How can I, like, what's the switch that I can flip whenever I want, type of thing. So
Yeah.
I got very serious about trying to figure that out. And what I can say now is anytime I get very serious about anything that relates to spiritual growth, it doesn't work. Very serious doesn't, it's like oil and water. Very serious does not, it doesn't compute in terms of spiritual growth. It
Mhm.
can't be very serious because it's too heavy, it's too tight, it's too confining. I
Yeah.
didn't realize that at the time. So I spent a good year and a half highly focused on just trying to learn how to consciously transition. And I had maybe two experiences that I would say were very, very close, where laying in bed, meditating, fell asleep for a split second, and then came back to awareness and I'm standing in my bathroom in an out of body experience. Like, that was pretty close, but it's like, I still don't understand it. I still can't flip the switch. But that frustration kind of shifted when I went to an immersive experience with Tom Campbell, which happened to be at the Monroe Institute, which was really cool because, that's the reason the Monroe Institute is there, is because some of the work that Tom did back in the day with Bob Monroe and the explorers. So that was a fun experience. But I went bent on getting Tom to show me, like, what am I missing? What's the secret to transition consciously? I was not going to leave without knowing that. And of course, all week I had zero experiences because I was just laying in bed like mad and frustrated and trying to will myself to have a conscious transition. And I was talking to Tom on the last day where you actually did sessions, and he was picking up on my frustration, and he basically said, you're trying to have an experience, you have an expectation of an immersive experience, and you just have to let that go.
Mhm.
You just have to take whatever comes and play with it. Just run with it. Pretend it's real. If you get a sensation in your leg, make it go bigger. And if something else happens, go with that. If you see a little dot in the blackness of your eyes, pretend like it's moving. Like, just play, just explore, relax. That was the main thing. Just relax. Like, don't try to force, don't wait for things to happen, which I heard him intellectually, but getting that at a being level is not so easy.
Yeah.
So I went into that session and I'm like, all right, fine. I'll play along.
Mhm.
So I went into the session, got into a good meditation state, and stuff started happening. I don't remember exactly what, but I started playing with it. Like, I think I was getting hypnagogic imagery and I was trying to, like, shift it and just playing, not really being serious about it at all, and kind of rolling my eyes as I did it, like, this is never going to work. This is stupid. Like, I just want to know the way.
Mhm.
And eventually the images started becoming a little more clear. And I should say that even as a visual artist and a writer, I've learned that I don't have a very good ability to visualize with clarity, and not as much as some people do, which surprised me to kind of realize that. So this is what I would call like a mind space type experience, where I was seeing things, but more than seeing them, it's the concepts that come with them. So maybe I'm seeing an older lady, which I did in this experience. But even before I see that she's wearing glasses, I get the concept that she's wearing glasses. And then, I can kind of see the glasses. So I guess my point is this: what I was seeing wasn't as important as what I was getting information wise.
Right.
But to make the long story short, I had this full experience of back and forth, asking questions like, oh, is this about so and so's mom? Yes, I would get this green light, or should I do this? No. So it was like this interactive experience that I thought was just total BS. I thought I was making it up, but I got a lot of, like, really specific details. And it was about a person who was at the event. This was supposedly his mom that I was interacting with. And she said a very specific thing to me, which was, I love you so much. And it was like meant for this person at the event. And there was also something about a diamond ring, but I understood conceptually that it wasn't diamond ring. It was diamond and ring somehow together, but separate, which I didn't understand. And then there was some other information. But what was interesting is the session had only been going for about 30 minutes. And all of a sudden I got this alarm, like, not literal, but conceptual in my head of, like, get up. You have to get up right now. And I was like, the session's not over. I'm not going to get up. There's somebody, in the check unit next to me. I'm just going to wait. And it's like, no, get up right now. And I'm like, right now? And it's the green light flashing. Yes, get up, get up, get up. So I was like, okay, I'm going to play along. And got up, opened the door to the hallway, and here comes the guy that was in my experience, the guy whose mother I was interacting with. And I was like, oh my God, okay. And I told him, I said, hey, I think we need to talk. So he had gotten up early to use the restroom by chance, right when I happened to open the door. And so he used the restroom. We went downstairs. I told him everything that had happened, and he starts bawling immediately. His mom passed away, all the information lined up. He showed me this big ring that he had that had a diamond on it, but it was a diamond from a piece of jewelry that his mom wore. I think it was an earring or a necklace. So that's where diamond plus ring, but not necessarily a diamond ring. So there was enough evidential data that I could not deny the fact that I had gotten information from just the mind space type interactions. Mm-hmm. So that really shifted, because my perspective of thinking that it had to be an immersive experience. And then I looked back at a lot of the experiences I had where, from sleep paralysis, I was either kind of stuck lifting out of my body, or even stuck in sleep paralysis, or maybe even in the void after sleep paralysis, and would, ask for something or have a particular intent to do something. And I looked back and remembered times that I got concepts of things, but I ignored it because I didn't see anything or I didn't hear anything. And I was like that's just like me chattering in my brain. So I ignored it. Mm-hmm. But looking back, I was like, oh, what an idiot. There was all this time somebody was, answering the call, so to speak, and I just ignored it because it wasn't something I could see, which is obviously ludicrous because it's a non-physical experience. It's non-physical. So there's no eyes, there's no ears, there's no sense receptors at all. It's just information and consciousness interacting together. So of course it's conceptual. So that was a big breakthrough. But then I, went back home and kind of entered what I would consider like a winter season of spirituality. And this seems to happen for me and other people that I talk to, where you have this long stretch of, spiritual activity, let's say, and then it kind of quiets down for a while and you're dealing with regular PMR life, and then maybe it picks up again. So I went into kind of a quiet season until I had the idea of, okay, I want to start, several years later, I want to start figuring out, like a knucklehead, how to get that conscious transition again. I was still hooked on the immersive experiences. I was like, okay, I can get information in the mind space place, but I still want to learn how to do that transition to an immersive experience from waking reality. So I started again to do that, and eventually hit a brick wall, and same thing over again. It's like, okay, I've got to take the nudge to stop doing this, because also during this time, the spontaneous experiences that I was able to have, like after I did the event with Tom and had that breakthrough and went back home, it was like I couldn't instigate the spontaneous experiences anymore. No matter what tricks I did, I couldn't get them to happen. And it really felt like I got kind of shut out, like somebody just closed the door on me. Like I'd have a sporadic experience, but it would be short-lived. So when I tried again to start instigating them, I thought it would work, but it didn't. And it was like they just weren't there anymore. So I took it as a hint to go a different direction. And that's when I decided to shift to just doing seated meditation for the sake of meditation. And that was kind of like the next phase, I guess, of the little spiritual season, was a focus on meditation. And that's where I am still, with all of my focus on seated meditation. And I completely just let go of having immersive experiences, even though they're really fun, because it was pretty obvious to me that for whatever reason, I was being encouraged to let that go. And what's funny is, for all of the struggle that I went through trying to make them happen, and even though I had that breakthrough experience, I still didn't quite get it. I was still stuck on the immersive experiences. But as I kept meditating, I started to have those same kind of interactions with information, I'll say, in the mind space type place. So not immersive, but just, concepts, flashes of things, maybe like sometimes you hear things. So I just started playing with that, and that's evolved over the last few years to where I was getting so much stuff that after the meditation session, I would try to write it all down. And it's like, there was too much. I can't remember everything, and I'm missing pieces. So what I started doing was getting a voice recorder app on my phone. And as I meditate, I dictate exactly what's happening. And I've been doing that for probably a year, maybe like 2 or 3 times a week, whenever I feel compelled to do it, basically. And what's kind of mind blowing is that for all of those experiences that I had, in the non physical, the immersive experiences, there weren't that many that were actually all that useful. They were amazing, fun, mind blowing just because of what was happening. But there was only a few where I brought back something useful, like a tool or an idea that I could apply. But with these dictated meditation experiences, what I've learned is the amount of information that's useful is like overflowing.
Mhm.
And some of it's just interesting. Like I dictate it, and then after the fact, I go back and look at what I dictated, and then I judge it. Like I don't judge it during the process. I just let it go, kind of like the experience that I had at the Monroe Institute. I just play. And at the end, sometimes it seems a little junky. Maybe I'm off that day, but sometimes I'm like, wow, that is really interesting. Like if I made that up, I'm impressed. Like that's cool. Like, it doesn't really matter where it comes from at that point. And so some of the stuff is just information. Like I might inquire, how does this particular thing work in the system, and see what I get back and just start dictating whatever information comes, and then look at it later. And what's surprising to me is how interesting it is, and how I would have a hard time making that up if I tried, some of the ideas. And a lot of them click together with other ideas. And pretty soon all these meditation sessions just like start slamming together, and it's painting this bigger picture of how things might work. I'll say that because I don't take it too seriously. Like if it's not something I can validate or verify, then I just go, oh, that's really interesting. Maybe, but that's a
Mhm.
neat idea. So I'll just hang on to that, and maybe it'll come up later. But I don't like, start a religion based on some ideas that I get. But
Yeah.
the things that have been most relevant are the things that I get that are related to my own personal growth and interactions with people and this world. And those have been really profound. And I can say that they have significantly changed my life, like in a way that I didn't even think was possible. So while the immersive experiences were fun, I tend to think that, and this is just a theory, this is just a thought. I can't say that this is true, but there's part of me that wonders if immersive experiences actually can create kind of a bottleneck for the information. Like obviously people might be having immersive experiences and not paying attention to the concepts that are coming through and the emotive feeling of what's happening, because they're so mesmerized by what they're seeing, and they're waiting to, almost by default, because that's how we interact with the world, they're waiting to see what happens next, or to see where this person walks, or to see what they're going to say, and they listen. And I think that that kind of overrides a lot of the underlying information that's actually there, which makes sense to me in terms of why so many of the non-physical experiences that I had were sort of messy and jumbled and didn't always make sense. Like as an example, this one particular experience, it started in sleep paralysis, lifted up, was in the void, and I decided to try to call for Uncle Tom, which if people have read My Big Toe, at the very back, he, basically says to reach out for Uncle Tom and he'll come help you in the non-physical. So I thought, well, I'm finally going to test this. And so I did. It was a very clear state. It was, straight from sleep paralysis. I was in the void still. So it was a perfect time. So I, called out, Uncle Tom, are you there? And all of a sudden this giant butterfly shows up, like this massive butterfly. And I'm like, are you the thing that shows up when people call for Uncle Tom? And it said, yes, I am. And it said, I forget exactly. I think I said, do you have any information that could help me? And it said something along the lines of, yes, I do, but I'm very sleepy right now. And so it laid down on the ground and transformed into a baby. And I remember saying, like, what are you doing? Like, you don't have to sleep. This is non-physical. Like, what's happening? But then it went to sleep. And then I forget if I woke up or went on to do something else. But that's what I mean, where things like that, I think, are pretty common for people when they talk about their lucid dreams and out of body experiences. And my hypothesis is it might be because a lot of the information is getting lost because of our inherent expectation to see, hear, feel, taste, touch.
Yeah.
Even though we still know that, it's not the way to interact with the non-physical, I think it's just such a regular part of our process that it sometimes can override the information. So for me, I see the benefit in exploring directly to the mind space type experiences, because then in theory, you're just consciousness interacting with the information. And what I've found by doing that is that they're immersive in the sense that when it's a good flow with the information, I feel immersed in the information where I forget that I'm sitting in a chair. I
Mhm.
forget about, the dogs barking or whatever's happening, and I'm lost in the information. So it's immersive in the sense that the data stream of PMR is temporarily faded or disconnected. Not to
Mhm.
the point where the body's unconscious, but you see what I mean, where it's faded enough where it's not prominent. And it seems to me that the information gets through more clearly and more directly, just based on the fact that when I apply that information in my day to day life, my life gets better. So therefore, that tells me it's either true that it's coming from outside me, or I'm making up really useful things for myself. Which either way, it's great, and it gets back to the idea of what Thomas said, where is it real? Is the wrong question. The question to ask is it useful?
Mhm.
And it makes sense that that's the only question you can really ask, because there's always uncertainty about where information comes from and if it's real or not.
Mhm.
But if it's useful, then that's great. It doesn't matter if you made it up or if the system sent it to you or your guides gave it to you.
Mhm. Absolutely. And it's true what you were saying earlier about the sense of attachment to having the experience, or the attachment or expectation of something being the very thing that prevents you from being able to do that, and going into it with a lighter sense, you maybe a little more playfully, just kind of more relaxed is the ideal way to be able to receive information, or to be able to connect with the system in a meaningful way. So,
Yeah.
would you say that has been the case for you, approaching it in a more playful way, or uh,
Yeah, 100%. And with my personality specifically, I tend to be internally pretty tight. Like my therapist has told me that I have OCD, which when she said that, I thought, nah, no, I don't have OCD. I don't, wash my hands 10 times. But then I started looking into high functioning OCD and realized, like, oh, okay, yeah, that fits. So it's been insightful to realize that. But that's how I approached a lot of those things. That's why I had to use the sneak up techniques, because you can't force anything to happen that's productive, at least not that I've seen in my own experiences. It always has to be gentle,
Mhm.
and if it's going to lead somewhere productive. I mean, there's obvious situations in the physical world where you have to use force to make things happen, but you know what I mean in terms of spiritual growth. Force, it's like it's not even a tool you can use. It just doesn't even do anything. It's absolutely useless. It has to be gentle, open, childlike, playful. These are all the things that are the key ingredients, I think, for anything,
Mhm.
in terms of exploring consciousness. And it's hard to do because a lot of us get really tightly wrapped up in the idea of, oh, well, I haven't had any lucid dreams or out of body experiences, therefore I must not be very spiritually evolved. But if I could just start having some experiences, I'd feel better about myself, because that must mean that somebody sees me in the system, and or and I'm recognized, or I'm good enough. But it's just not the case in my experience that that's actually true. You can be extremely highly evolved, you can be extremely loving and have no out of body experiences, or no paranormal abilities. It just, each person's different. Each person has a different resonance with a different path. So yeah, and for me that was definitely a problem of being wound too tight about trying to force the experiences to happen.
Mhm.
And and now it's just play, and it's so much easier, and so much more fun. And sometimes the meditation sessions don't really amount to much. Sometimes I nod off and I'm like, well, shoot, all I had was hypnagogic dream vignettes the whole time that didn't really mean anything, and that's okay. Like, I was tired, so go to bed earlier and try again the next day. Like, it's not failure. It's just part of the process. It's no big deal. I guess that's the main thing. And I would really love for, because I know there's people out there that are similar, that struggle with really wanting to make it happen.
Mhm.
And all I can say is, you'll never make it happen.
Right.
Not make it happen by force. Never.
Mhm. And so would you say now that you well, you did say, actually, let me start that part over. You said that now you simply focus on meditation and you just allow it to unfold as it does, and then observe without judgment and then look at it later. And I think that's a really key part, that while you're receiving the information, you aren't questioning it, or you aren't trying to categorize it or wonder how you're going to describe this to somebody later. It's just, it's just throwing it all out there and just seeing what it is after you're able to get it out. I think that's really helpful. That's really important to be
Yeah.
able to receive the information that way.
Yeah, definitely. And that's especially true for someone like me who would have a tendency to be in a deep meditation state, and something would happen and you'd say, "Oh, that was something. Oh, that was something. Was that something? What should I do? Should I follow that? Should I, what do you do?" It's letting all of that go and just saying, "Oh, that was something. That's cool. Oh, now it feels like I'm kind of floating a little bit, and now my toes are numb. Okay, cool. Now, oh, now I feel like someone's tapping me on the shoulder conceptually, and oh, and now there's some information about whatever."
Mhm.
And then for me, I just start saying it out loud. And for me particularly, I think speaking out loud while I'm in that meditative state, it does something in terms of my own unique physiology or psychology or makeup that gives my intellect something to do. Like,
Mm,
its job is to be like a courtroom reporter. It doesn't have time to analyze and think. It's trying to, say the right thing or find the right word to describe the concepts. So it's busy. And
mhm.
so I can just kind of direct, you know, pretending that there's this separation in my brain, right? My left brain can dictate while my right brain kind of goes, "Oh, look over there, let's go over there." And like, "Oh, now I feel like this is happening." And it gets to just play in the same way that a kid would play in a sandbox. They don't analyze what they're doing. They're not worried about, what the outcome of the two toy soldiers playing is going to be like. They're just making it up as they go. They're just having fun. And that's exactly what works, at least for me. And saying it out loud as it happens engages my intellect enough that it works for me. And that's the thing. People have to find, each person has to find their thing, so to speak. There is no one way to interact, or there is no one way to explore consciousness. There's many ways to do it. You can just walk around in your daily life and just trust your gut instinct. You
Mm,
could free write. You could do classic out of body experiences. There's all variety of ways to explore consciousness. And the thing that makes me kind of laugh at myself is, you know, here I am thinking that it's highly probable that I'm here by choice in this physical world that's a schoolhouse. Like, I came here on purpose, right? I'm doing it. I'm here, I'm in it. And yet to put all this time on trying to explore outside of it seems a little funny. It's like, wait a minute, I got here and now I'm just trying to get out. I mean, it
yeah.
makes sense because it's a fun experience and it's eye opening. But at a certain point, it's like, okay, yeah, that exists.
Yes.
So what? Like, but you're here. Here you are. So
Right.
to me, the focus is entirely using the meditations as a way to fully engage this experience to the best of my ability, so that when my time's up here, I've gathered and harvested as much fruit and nuggets of wisdom as I can, and hopefully done so in a way that's helped people instead of harmed people along the way.
Mhm.
And to me, that's it. That's the whole name of the game. It's actually pretty simple, I think. It's just a matter of finding our own little niches and finding ways that we can do that more productively, and to make it easier on ourselves. But it's all exploring consciousness. That's literally what we're doing right now. We're exploring consciousness because this is an experience within the larger system of consciousness. So there's nothing really to do. We're in it.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, even just this conversation that we get to interact with each other and, and share something with each other. And
Yes.
I mean, part of it, we're just sharing just our time with each other. Even that alone, I think, is valuable when you're exploring consciousness. Just being around other pieces of consciousness too.
Yes. And that's an important thing to point out, that in the immersive experiences, especially if it was, let's say I became lucid in a dream. And I should say that in my view, I don't think there's such a hard line between lucid dreaming and out of body experiences.
Mhm.
There's a lot of, well, I think there's dreams of the psychology. For example, if you're spend the entire day laying PVC pipe for a sprinkling system and you're digging, and you spend 10 hours doing that, and then that night you have a dream that you're doing that again, or a dream that you're, in a public restroom and all of a sudden the walls fall down and you're, everyone's staring at you. To me, those are maybe dreams of like psychology or of the psyche. Whereas there's some dreams that don't quite feel like that. They feel what I would just say is special. Like to me, they feel like unconscious out of body experiences. Like
Mm-hmm.
maybe you're having a dream that you're in some other reality, it seems like, and there's this whole culture of people and you're interacting, and maybe there's someone that goes, "Hey, what are you doing here?" And then other people try to help you. Like those kind of experiences to me are very likely to be what people would consider an out of body experience, but while you're unconscious. So I don't know that there's any clear cut, way to distinguish between them.
Let's talk about Tom's Park a little bit and what you think of how that works with the meditative experience, like the more playful side. Right?
Sure.
Okay. Okay. So I found out that you are the artist behind the map of Tom's Park in the book, the book called Tom's Park. So you worked on the map of the park, and then also the hexagon rooms and the other diagrams in the book as well. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's funny because it coincides with this whole idea that I've been talking about of, mind space type meditation interactions.
Mm-hmm.
And, while I was creating the map, that was after the experience at Monroe Institute with Tom, where I had that, mind space experience where I seemingly got information or did get information about this guy's mother who'd passed. And what's funny about that, and this just goes to show how kind of knuckleheaded or stubborn I can be, is that even though I was like helping Tom make a map to help people do exactly what I've learned to do, I didn't realize it at the time. But I had a great time making the map. It was a lot of work. It was more work than I had anticipated. I had to learn to use, some different programs, but I mean, how cool is it to get to create a theme park map? You know what I mean? It was so much fun. And yeah,
Absolutely.
I did the hexagon rooms as well. And yeah, but it's interesting because now I look back and I realize like, oh my God, Tom's Park is literally the perfect tool because
Mm-hmm.
of all the reasons that I described about learning to just let go and just play and just have fun and not worry about if it's real. Just go have fun. And if you don't, what if I don't see the water? What if I can't feel the water? It doesn't matter. It can be conceptual. It can just be a whatever. It doesn't have to be anything particular. It can be unique to you. So it's really the idea tool. But what's funny but understandable is that a lot of people, will say, well, I can't go to Tom's Park. It doesn't work. It's like, well, it does because you're just expecting to sit there and then like for Tom's Park to show up. And that's
Right.
just not how it works. You have to slip your way in gently.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least if you're someone like me who's wound pretty tight internally. If you're someone like you, Michelle, who's a little more free flowing and intuitive, it might happen more easily. But I know there's a lot of people that get involved with Tom's work and start following him that tend to be more analytical and left brained. And so it's really just the perfect tool for that kind of person like me, where you can just tell yourself, like, just stop worrying about it. Just really stop worrying about it. Spend a month just goofing around, 20 minutes a day, pretending like you're there,
Right.
acting like you see stuff, acting like you're interacting with somebody. And in my experience, if you're not judging and don't have expectations, it will evolve into something. And
Mm-hmm.
you'll come out one day and go, oh, that was interesting. And then you'll, bump into somebody on the street and there'll be some synchronicity or some verifiable data. And you'll say, oh my God, like that, I thought I was making that up, but apparently like that it was something, verifiable or real.
Yeah.
Um, and it's that simple, I think, but it's a very big hurdle to get over for a lot of people. But yeah, it's the perfect tool. And even while I was making the map, I didn't realize how perfect it was. So it's a nice kind of synchronicity and forehead slap moment. Now I look back and go, oh wow, I could have just been doing that the whole time. But it's
Yeah.
all part of the process.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with you. I think it is the perfect tool to just get started and not be so wound up about how things are going to go. Just a very relaxing. And you don't have to, I mean, my sister has not read My Big Toe. She has not read Tom's Park. All she has done is watched a workshop about Tom's Park and how it works. She's heard me speaking about it. And one day when her 10-year-old daughter was having a complete meltdown, she said, "Come on, let's go to the that park that Auntie Shell was telling us about." And they imagined their way into this park and got, ice cream, and who cares if it has a great lodge or the lake, or, it's whatever they imagined
Right.
from, whatever they wanted to accomplish that day, which was just to get my niece out of a bad mood. And it
Right.
worked. It worked immediately. She met a little piglet there, and then went back to see it the next day, in the morning before my sister had woken up. My niece had already gone to the park on her own to visit the piglet that she had met the day before. So it works for anybody, and I really think that's a really fun way just to get started, especially if you have a hard time with meditation and things
Yes.
like that. So thank you for being part of creating that. I've looked at that map a lot of times. So I always, now that I know it was you, I always think about you when I look at,
Aw,
but yeah, if anybody's interested, you can go to tomsparkmap.com and check out, Justin has poster sized versions of the map, which I think is really cool, just to be able to have it already printed wherever you're meditating. And that way you're not getting distracted by your phone, because
right.
that's my pet peeve. I pick up my phone to look at something relevant for relevant for my meditation, and then 20 minutes later checking my
You're
email.
ordering, yeah, yeah. You're ordering candles off of Amazon or something
Yeah,
random, right? Like it's just, yeah,
I forgot to do that thing.
yeah,
But yeah, thank you for being part of creating such a cool tool for everybody to get started. I love
yeah.
that.
I'm glad I got to participate in it, especially because it has, significant meaning in my own little journey. It's
Yeah,
kind of come full circle and realizing how useful it is after the fact of creating it. So yeah, it's been fun.
a few years down the road, you look back.
Yeah, yeah. That's how things work with me. I'm slow, but I get there eventually, and that's
Yeah.
all right.
So one of the things that you had mentioned to me before that I thought was really interesting, and I think would be really helpful for people to understand just how to wrangle their logical process or the other parts of themselves that are distracting during those moments when you're trying to meditate or trying to release the data from physical material reality. You mentioned the chariot and the horses as your metaphor of understanding how to, essentially be your own boss internally. So can you tell us about that? Because I really loved that.
Yeah, definitely. This is some of these ideas are ideas that came during meditation,
Mm,
during the sessions where I dictated, went back and looked at it afterwards. And what's amazing about that is it often tends to coincide with um, real life events. For example, a friend of mine who's interested in this kind of stuff will send me a message that correlates with the meditation that I just did. And what I find is the more I apply the information of these meditations, the more life starts to feel like a lucid dream in a way where it's like, oh, now this is happening and this is happening and this all lines up and isn't this fun? And it's just like this interesting chain of events that just start to happen. But one of the ideas that I got first that kind of started this charioteer metaphor that I really like to use now is it's the idea of what I call the lucid witness. And it started out, I used to call it the Chipotle state because there's kind of a random funny story that goes with that. And this happened actually back when I was having more of the immersive non-physical experiences. And I was sitting in Chipotle one day and my wife had gotten up to get a drink or something. And out of nowhere, I just had this huge influx of lucidity. And it felt exactly comparable to as if I had become lucid in a dream. And for a second, I even thought like, oh, is this a dream? And it's like, oh no, but yes, it is. You know what I mean? It was that same sensation of, and it wasn't that the reality around me did anything strange, um, in a way that it might, like with a psychedelic or something, but it did feel somehow distant and separate and fake in a way. And it did kind of look different. And I felt very different inside of reality. And it was kind of like the veil fell away. It'd be like if you're watching a play and you suddenly see that it's all just props and you realize they're all actors. That it was that same sensation. But there wasn't during that state, there wasn't any major, like I wasn't, it's not that I couldn't think, but I just wasn't thinking. It was so strong of a sense of being, of just existing. It was like this hyper real sense of existence. That's all there was. It's just this witness state of just, ah, I exist. That's it. It was super powerful. So I started calling it the Chipotle state because I didn't know what else to call it. And then it happened a few times over the years spontaneously. Once while I was in the restroom, like getting ready, and all of a sudden it was like, oh, wait a minute. And then it just happened. And it's hard to describe because it feels literally like somebody turned up your level of awareness to 110% so that nothing can exist but that sense of awareness. And to me, that's like becoming the higher self for that moment. And you're just existing. There's nothing else to do. There's no thinking that you need to do. You're just existing. That's it. And so that came up in later meditation sessions as I was dictating it. And I started to realize, like, this is a really important state for everything. And that was the information that I continued to get in the meditations, that for everything, no matter what you're doing, if you can try to find some of that state, even just a little bit, it makes everything easier. Like literally, if you want to explore Tom's Park, try to find that state of where you just exist. Mm-hmm. And even when I do that, I get kind of this sensation, and to me, it feels a little body buzzy. It doesn't have to. It can feel lots of sorts of ways, but that's what I tend to get. But I came to the realization through the meditations that that is the state to do anything. If you want to meditate, try to tap into that state. If you want to go out of body, try to tap into that state. If you want a remote view, try to tap into that state. If you want to have a good relationship, tap into that state. If you're having a bad day, tap into that state. It's like always there to pull from. That doesn't mean it's easy, and it doesn't mean you can turn up the volume all the way like it might happen spontaneously, but you can control the volume, the dial a little bit, and make it happen. And suddenly things, not only do you feel better, but you can navigate the world easier. And I've noticed that synchronistic things start to happen like in a ridiculous way, because it's kind of like when you're in that state, you're in the natural flow of the system. You're not swimming against anything. You're just in the flow. And I tend to imagine the activities of the system like this blob of like a lava lamp, this fluid stuff moving around. And when you're in tune with that, when you're in flow with that, it tends to like bump you into just the right things at just the right moments. And, like, oh, this worked out so well. And, oh, I met this person. And it starts to have that feeling of like, oh, this is like a lucid dream where everything's just kind of fun and interesting things are happening. Mm-hmm. So it's that state that I think is so important. But then in subsequent meditation sessions, I got this idea of a way to kind of think about this state as if we're a charioteer driving a chariot, but there's a team of horses pulling the chariot and pulling us as the charioteer. And it's a metaphor to describe our higher self, let's say, just to use that term, and our experience in this body with this particular psychology, this particular childhood experiences, this particular brain chemistry. Those are the horses. And those are what typically do all of the driving for most people. Even when people are aware of it, it's still hard not to let the horses pull you wherever the horses want to pull you. So the idea of the lucid witness state is to pull yourself back so that you're the charioteer, so that you're not caught up in being the horse, mm-hmm. or caught up in letting the horses drag you wherever they want to drag you. And what I've learned from practicing that is that it's almost like it calms the horses down, because instead of fighting with them and letting them drag you around and you're getting mad at them, it's like you're saying, hey guys, just take it easy. Like, okay, you're having a rough day, grumpy horse. You know what I mean? So we're gonna work with you. Everything's fine. Like, and then just go this way. Okay, good. That's nice. Yeah, that's fine. And so obviously it's just a metaphor, but as you think about how that applies to a spouse or a teenager or someone that's treating you poorly at work, our typical reaction is to get mad and to like become in it, become a part of it and entangle ourselves in it. But that's the horse that wants to do that. That's the horse that wants to protect us,
Mm-hmm.
or that wants to make sure we come out on top, or show that guy what he really deserves. But when you use the lucid witness state and try to pull back as the charioteer, even if you're faking it, even if you're just pretending, it calms everything down and you're suddenly detached from the horse and you can see it for what it is. It's just a reaction that your unique personality is having. And it takes all the weight from it and all the strength away from it. So that now it's just kind of this, oh, this horse, my horse is having a reaction today. That's okay. It's no big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can navigate it gracefully. You don't have to get mad, and it's all very smooth, I guess you could say. That's easier said than done, of course. But like as I go through life, I keep that metaphor in my mind, at least over the last, I don't know, I guess it's been 4 or 5 months that I was getting this in and kind of pieced it all together through the meditations. And to say that it's made my life better is an understatement. Like it's astronomically better. It's literally, I was at an event this weekend, Contact in the Desert, which is kind of a UFO, UAP type of thing, which isn't really my thing. But I went with some friends and was like, yeah, let's go and have fun. And as I was going through the weekend, I try to keep some of that lucid witness state, like keep it turned up a little bit, remind myself, like, oh no, turn it up. And it was the greatest weekend I've had in a long time. And it was just amazing how interacting with people and bouncing from one conversation and one thing to the next, it had that sense again of where it's like being in a lucid dream, where it's like, this is incredible. This is exploring consciousness. That literally is doing it. But you're doing it with an awareness and ability to, quote unquote, control it, or at least navigate it gracefully, so that your horses don't plow over people and they don't put you in a place where it hurts. You know what I mean? Because when we get wrapped up in the identity of the horses, that's when life becomes pretty painful.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not to negate suffering and the struggles of life, because they're very real. So it doesn't make them go away, but it negates the strength that they have and the power that it has. So I found it to be like an incredibly useful tool. Those two things combined, the lucid witness state and this metaphor of the charioteer, and trying to pull back into that existence of the charioteer. And yeah, I just think and to me that validates the meditation experiences, because it's information that I got through that. And did
Yeah.
I make it up? Did the system hand it to me? I don't know. Doesn't matter. It's great.
It's helpful. Yeah,
Right.
it's been incredibly helpful, and it makes sense. It makes sense when you share that with somebody else. It helps to understand it in a different way. It helps to see it in that different way, and it's that feeling of being fully present in your reality, but being able to step back from the reactions that might be bubbling up. And I guess it's kind of what people call having a bigger decision space. You have a little
Yes.
time, you have a few seconds to, it doesn't, and it won't actually even feel like a few seconds. It happens instantly, but internally it feels like you have more time to make the decision about how you're going to respond when something pops up in your environment that could cause you, usually some kind of excitement for your horses.
Right, right.
Right.
Yeah, and I think it's the other thing that I realized in all this is that it's okay. That, like, if your horses drag you a certain direction, and you identify with the horses when they're angry, let's say, and you say something to somebody that you wish you didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it's not ideal, but it's okay. That's literally, in my opinion, why we're here. If there was no horses and no challenge and no field to transverse on the chariot, there'd
Mm-hmm.
be no schoolhouse. That's all it. That's all part of it. And everyone's got their own unique team of horses, and some teams of horses are, a really rough bunch, and people have a hard time navigating it. And that's important to realize that, because if I was to, let's say, jump from my chariot over to theirs and try to drive it, I may do terribly. Who knows? Or I may do really well. Like everyone's going to be able to manage the team of horses in their own unique way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just good to give ourselves grace, or our team of horses grace. Like it's still on us, not to take away responsibility from, us, but because the horses are us. But
Mm-hmm.
it's okay. It's okay to go through life and struggle and make mistakes, because that's how we learn. If there's no other way to do it, you can't sit in a classroom in the non-physical as a chunk of consciousness and have all of this be explained to you, because it won't stick. The only
Yeah.
way to do it is to be in it and to be in the grind of it. And sometimes it hurts and it's hard, and we have our horses that make it challenging. But if you wake up tomorrow, I can pretty much guarantee you're going to have the same team of horses. We all are. So you can't make them go away, but you can learn to navigate them more gracefully.
Yeah.
And it's, everyone's got that same thing going on. That's why we're all unique and different. And we all drive the chariot a little differently, and our horses are a little different. And that's what creates all this great novelty and opportunities to grow and evolve. But
Yeah.
it's good to do it gracefully as we can, and with the least amount of suffering and pain, right?
Yeah, we try.
We try. Yeah, that's the best we can do, is try.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, so my final question then, Justin, because since meditation has become such an important part of are you doing this daily? Is it a daily practice for you?
I don't. My usual mode of operation would be to, like, I'm going to do it every day. And then I realized, like, no, no, no. That's the horse that wants to control everything, right? So it's like, So I would say on average, I probably do it 2 or 3 times a week. And if I can't do it for a week because I'm busy, it's okay. I
Yeah.
jump right back in. It's the same. So yeah, it's a regular practice, but there's no structure to it other than just, I feel like meditating today and I want to explore something, I do it. If not, I don't. And this connection it can be always too. You know what I mean? It can show up in the form of intuition, or just internal knowings. But definitely meditation helps that. I think helps us distinguish when it's, maybe not our intellect and maybe coming from somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. I know a lot of people have questions about what types, usually these are the questions I hear. What types of meditation are you doing, or what is your meditation process? Or do you use a mantra? Do you use binaural beats? What are the kinds of things, or is it just you sit down and close your eyes and you're good? Like what is your process?
Yeah, it's funny because I've excuse me, I've bounced around with different processes, and I've had to make an effort not to become religious about my processes. So I let it evolve. I went through a straight stage where I was doing pranayama breathing, and that worked really well. And then I just decided to change it one day. And then I was doing this like chakra meditation that I learned, and it was seeming to work really well.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I've literally repeated a mantra the entire time and still internally repeated the mantra and still spoken out loud, which was actually pretty interesting. But then after a while, I decided to change it. So I just let it happen how it wants to happen. But for the most part, I do like a 12-minute yoga routine.
Mm-hmm.
I read about it in, some yoga book, and as a baseline for meditation, which, actually
Yeah.
I've been taking a lot of Hindu classes on some of the ancient texts and come to the realization that, obviously postural Western yoga has nothing really to do with the
Yeah.
original intentions of yoga, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
but, in a lot of, well, in some ways the purpose is to prepare your body for seated meditation. That's really like one of the core purposes of it. So I use it for that, because it does feel better to sit after I've done about 12 minutes of light yoga, just to
Mm-hmm.
kind of get myself warmed up. It feels comfortable to sit after I've done that. And I sit upright because I'm less likely to drift into, one of the big struggles for me was drifting into the hypnagogic vignettes, is what I call them, where you're meditating, saying your mantra, and suddenly you're washing a car and it's immersive, and you're like, wait a minute, oh, dang it, and then you're going back to your mantra. So it prevents that from happening, for me. So I do it seated, upright, and just anything to get myself to relax.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I'm relaxed enough, then I just start going with whatever comes up. I might even just make something up, or I'll ask a question and I'll make up my own answer. And next thing you know, it's turned into this whole thing where I've forgotten that I'm meditating and I'm just swimming in this information. And I come out of it And I always kind of smile because it's like, oh, I was lost in that. Like I forgot what I was doing. Like, I'm not unaware, but I am to some degree. My intellect is unaware, or
Yeah.
it's busy speaking. So yeah, my I guess my process is to do what feels right and always be open to adjust. There is something to be said for sticking to something for a while. But for me, particularly, I know because of my horses that if I do that, I can turn it into, banging my head against the wall, trying to get somewhere. So I just let it flow and adapt. But for the most part, it's just seated meditation, sometimes a mantra. I don't use binaural beats. Usually I just play nature sounds in my ear. I used brown noise for a while, but binaural beats I tend to be pretty reactive to. Just like anesthesia, they always, anytime I've had a surgery, they act like all they had to do was look at me and I went unconscious. So binaural beats tend to make me click out almost instantly. And then when it's over, I wake up and I'm like, oh well, I don't remember anything. So, but they work really well for some people. So it's just a matter of finding what works for you and not doing it with an expectation that it's going to work. If it doesn't work, then just shift, do something else, and hold everything lightly, I think is the trick.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with that. Try all of the different things and see what works for you or what combination of things works for you, and then be open to changing it. You don't have to
Yes.
be dogmatic about it and try to repeat that every single time, because that's not the only way.
Right, exactly. And it'll change. As we change, you know what I mean? What works will change as our
Yeah.
awareness changes and our decision space and as we grow and evolve. So nothing should be held tightly is one thing that I've kind of learned. No ideas, not even anything. Like, I use Tom Campbell's model as a guide, but it's just a story. It's just a guide. It's not, other than that, it's a waypoint.
Yeah.
And there's this idea that, which also came through meditation, this idea that we're on this journey, walking across the desert. And along the way, we bump into certain structures and little places, and you stop and check it out. And what some people do is they stop and they build a fortress there.
Mm.
And that's kind of the metaphor for, like, assigning yourself to a particular religion or a particular theory. And I think that I don't want to say dangerous, but it's limiting, because you should fully expect to that you're going to discover more. So if you
Mm.
stop to build your fortress and start protecting it, it's not going to get you anywhere other than exactly where you're at. So it's good to make use of things along the way, but then you just have to let it go and keep going, because there's going to be other things along the way. And I don't think that ever ends. Just like a stick bug is not always going to be a stick bug. It's going to change into something else as its environment changes. We're the same way. Like, we're going to keep evolving, and we should expect to make new discoveries. So there's no process or theory or anything that's fundamental. It's just we can carry it as a probable truth and hold it lightly. And then when we're ready for the next bit of information, we adjust and just keep going. To me, that's the process. Just constant forward momentum, no
Absolutely.
end.
Perfect. Couldn't put it any better myself. Well, thank you so much, Justin. This has been a really fun conversation. I think very valuable as well. Just a lot of great information. So thank you so much for being here. Is there anything you'd
Thank
like to
you.
add in closing?
No, I just really appreciate the chance to talk, and yeah, it's been super fun. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, take care.
All right. Take care, Justin.